Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
So, as we heard Secretary Walsh say that there's 4,300 projects they think are up and going, or some sort of the planning stages. Can you give us a sense how many of those are in Maryland, and what do you think would be the first things that people in Maryland kind of see and feel in terms of this new infrastructure law?
Well, first of all, let me just say that we're very excited that the infrastructure bill passed. I was chairman of the National Governors Association, and I chose you get to have a chair's initiative. Mine was focused on rebuilding America's infrastructure, and I spent from 2019 to 2020 trying to get all of the governors on board with recommendations, and all of our suggestions became part of this infrastructure bill. And I hosted an unprecedented summit in Annapolis where I brought in governors, senators, and congressmen from both sides of the aisle, and we really pushed to get this done. We are very excited about the implementation of the bill. We have formed a sub-cabinet on infrastructure. I think we're the first state in the country to do so, and we've been moving forward on a number of our infrastructure projects. This funding, when we get it, is going to be helpful in us kind of taking things to the next level and implementing our infrastructure strategy. But we have projects, hundreds of projects all over the state, and when we get the final regs and when we get the funding, this is going to help us take them to the next level.
Do you think, are we talking roads, bridges, broadband, what sorts of things could people expect? And I know this is going to play out over many years, but even like later this year, in terms of physical activity?
Well, so as an example, we're making huge investments and improvements to the Port of Baltimore. We're making improvements to BWI Airport, which is the #1 airport in the region. We've got the largest P3 transit project in North America, the Purple Line, under construction, the largest P3 road project in the world, traffic relief plan to fix the Capitol Beltway and build a new American Legion bridge. We're moving forward on the top priority infrastructure projects in every single jurisdiction in our state. We've already resurfaced the entire state highway system. So it's really in every aspect of infrastructure, including protecting the grid. We made sure that cybersecurity was included and broadband. This is going to help us further the investments that we've already taken and make great progress in many areas throughout the state.
And Governor, you heard me talking to Secretary Walsh about the labor shortage we're kind of experiencing as a country with 3.6% unemployment. Are you concerned about getting the workers you need to do these jobs and get things going quickly? And I imagine a lot of companies are having a hard time finding the workers. Are you going to be able to get them for these different sectors that are going to be crucial for this work?
Well, that's a good question. So this is going to create a heck of a lot of jobs. We just had some announcements this week at the Port of Baltimore where we're going to need 14,000 more direct jobs. It's going to contribute to about 140,000 jobs statewide. Our traffic relief plan, I think, is another 9,000 jobs. And there's no question that there's a worker shortage, and it's one of the biggest challenges that we face. We need to make sure that our workforce development programs can kind of keep up with the demand for more skilled workers. And we recently launched an initiative, it's first of its kind in the country, which removed the college degree requirement for thousands of state jobs. We're looking to recruit people who perhaps develop skills through alternate routes, whether it's community college or military service or just on-the-job training. And Maryland's a national leader on apprenticeships. We're now at the highest participation rate in state history, and we're going to trying to continue to build a steady pipeline of workers. We're being aggressive with our job training and retraining, reskilling. And one current example is we're making the switch to zero-emission buses, which involves retraining skilled workers to make sure we keep all those buses in good repair and training our workers and our drivers. But we're going to work closely with all of our universities on internships, with our community colleges, work with all the folks in the transportation field. And it's a big issue that we've got to continue to focus on as a nation, is the lack of folks in the labor force.
Another thing we talk about in terms of these big, macroeconomic issues that I imagine would impact the infrastructure law is inflation. And then, $1.2 trillion is a lot of money, but it's not, $100 trillion. You guys are going to have to be kind of strategic in what you're going to do. and you don't want the price to be a moving target. These projects will take time. You can't lock in on one price and then the price goes up 20%. How are you guys going to manage, or how do you think inflation could impact what you're trying to do here? And is it something that you are comfortable about, or are you kind of nervous about?
Well, that's a great question. Well, first of all, it's not quite the way everybody thinks. That it's not like $1.2 billion is all of a sudden dumped out into the economy, and we've got this pile of money that we're trying to spend. It's really a 20% increase in infrastructure funding from the federal level, and it's stretched over 5 years. So about 4% per year. We're going to ease into the economy, but there's no question with the supply chain crisis that we're faced with the labor issues that we just talked about, that the costs of some of these projects are going up dramatically, which is going to have to, we're going to have to scale down the expectations about how far this money is going to go, because again, it's projects over the next 5 years, many of which are bid at a number that is a potentially escalating number because of the increased costs and the inflationary pressures that we're all faced with in every market.
And Governor, you know this as well as anybody. This infrastructure law almost existed in a parallel universe to what else was happening in Washington. There was a lot of bipartisan support. I think at one point there was like 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans in the Senate who were working, closely on this. How do you think this kind of law can be replicated, or do you feel like the way things are going, even with some of the primaries this week, we might be in a situation where these types of laws are even harder to pass in the future?
Well, so, I think this was a great example of how we can actually come together in a bipartisan way, common sense, solutions to a problem that everyone has been talking about, and everyone has said that this is something that we needed to focus on in both parties. And so I mentioned earlier that we started this Rebuilding America's Infrastructure Initiative at the National Governors Association, where we got all 50 governors to agree. And then we got all of those recommendations put into the bill. So that's real bipartisanship. And the leaders of the states who are actually implementing all the infrastructure, building all the infrastructure, it was great to see agreement from us. And then I'm the chair of a group called No Labels, and we have a group called the Problem Solvers Caucus. We met with the Problem Solvers Caucus, came out to our state capitol in Annapolis, just down the road from Washington, and we brought in really governors of both parties, senators from both parties, and in just about the entire House Problem Solvers Caucus, which was 29 Republicans and 29 Democrats, and we hammered out this package. The Democrats kind of wanted $4 trillion of things that were not infrastructure. The Republicans only wanted to spend $500 or $600 million just on roads and bridges. And we negotiated and reached a compromise at about 1.2 trillion, which includes, we got things like cybersecurity, protecting the grid, energy, resiliency, highways, roads, bridges, tunnels, airports, ports. It expanded it, but it's all kind of focused on infrastructure, and that's how it got done. Frankly, there were forces on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, trying to kill it because progressives wanted the $4 trillion of social spending included. The Republicans did not want some of the other things included, and President Trump was fighting against, just trying to get Republicans not to vote for it. So it was a great win. I'm concerned about the divisiveness and dysfunction in Washington, and in an election year, it's kind of even harder to try to bring people together. But I'm hopeful that we're going to find some other things that we can. This is a good example of how maybe you can get people to meet in the middle and reach compromise solutions.
And just to go back quickly on the President Trump, I think he, as you mentioned, he really went after the law after it was passed, in part because it kind of gave a win to President Biden. But some of the House Republicans, I believe, who voted for it lost their primaries in part because they supported it. Do you think that some might get cautious going forward that, wow, it seemed bipartisan at the time, but there might be some kind of aftershock? Or do you think that as time goes on and people see this law as a popular thing, it'll end up being kind of a good vote for both parties?
Well, I think this is a great thing for America, and I think long-term people are going to reward the people that actually made decisions to move America forward and to fix our crumbling infrastructure. But this was not one-sided. I mean, there were there were people in the Democratic side that were really threatening their members because they did not want to vote for the compromise, and they wanted to include the $4 trillion. Trump did not want Republicans to vote for it. And look, it was about a mixed bag. I mean, some folks on the Democratic side lost their primaries as a result of which way they voted on that decision or what they have or haven't gotten done. Some Republicans, in fact, the chairman of the Problem Solvers Caucus, Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, was just overwhelmingly reelected. And he was a leader on this issue. So I think it's far too early to determine what's going to happen in the election, the rest of the primaries, or what's going to happen in November.
Can I ask, we have an audience question from Sandra in Nevada who asks, how do we diversify our infrastructure workforce? Women of color are barely present in this segment of the workforce. Do you have thoughts on how we could do a better job about that?
Well, it's a great question. I would say that that's probably true. I think women in general are underrepresented in the infrastructure workforce, and women of color are probably even less represented. Maryland does a pretty good job in this area. So, we're, I think, number one in the country on small, minority, and women-owned business creation and startups, and the kinds of things that we do to encourage and require the participation of small and minority and women-owned businesses in our procurement processes. But this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with skilling and training the workforce for the needs of tomorrow. And there's going to be tremendous opportunity in so many different areas that are going to be impacted by this infrastructure investment. And we certainly ought to take every step we can to make sure that we have as diverse of a group as we possibly can participating in the potential economic benefits of this.
And speaking of training, and this is an issue that I'm just really obsessed with, it's the education system needs to be able to train people, not just in community colleges, but even at the high school level to get them ready for these jobs, which could be, great entry-level jobs. I'm sure you hear a lot because of your involvement with schools in your state about challenges finding teachers in this economy. Can you talk about whether that's been getting better? Is that going to be a continued struggle? Because teachers obviously are part of the labor market too, and they could decide, I'd rather do this profession or that profession. Give us an update on what you're hearing from kind of the teacher community.
Well, I think we're having issues and problems in just about every segment of our economy, with people not returning to work or, problems in the workforce of trying to get, teachers are certainly not immune to that. And, so we're trying to train more teachers. But this is an area where we really want to try to work with our younger kids, in high school, to say, you don't have to get a 4-year degree to get a pretty good job. And we want to work with our high schools, and we have a thing called P-TECH where we provide, STEM focus with kids that need an opportunity, and we provide summer internships and apprenticeships and put them first in line for jobs. And we work closely with our community colleges and with our private sector to design programs to train workers without maybe the need for, advanced higher education. Some of them come out of there with really well-paying jobs. And so I think we have a thing called the EARN program where we let the private sector design the training that they need everybody has huge demand for workers, and their number one complaint is we don't have enough skilled workers. So we're going to have them design the programs. We're implementing them through primarily through our community colleges, and the state is actually, providing grants to pay for it. So we can train more of our citizens and get them the jobs that they deserve, and also take care of our employers who have the shortage of workers.
We're at a kind of a strange moment in the economy where we have, as you know, really low unemployment, but we have record gas prices, high inflation. Imagine your state is not immune to what could be happening in terms of travel, in the summertime especially. What are you hearing and seeing about the kind of localized economy and the projections that business owners have about where things could be going over the summer? Because I think that'll kind of, people might change their investment behavior, their decisions about whether to, build that addition to their building or even to redo their kitchen or something if they think the economy is going to pull back, and that could have kind of a domino effect.
Well, it's a great question. So right now we're really pleased that our economy is booming, and we've got one of the best economic recoveries in America. And we went from 7 years ago, one of the worst. We were 49th out of 50 states to one of the best. I think we had the biggest economic turnaround in America. And we now have record revenues and record job creation and record business startups. And, so we're in a good place, but there's no question all the things we've been talking about, inflation, the problems in the supply chain, problems with the work, the lack of skilled workers, that's really going to be exacerbated during the summer on the gas tax. It's a huge issue with dramatically rising gas prices. We were the first state in America to put a pause on the gas tax, so to try to help people at the pump. And at one point, we were the lowest gas prices in the country. Some states followed our lead. It was only a temporary measure. It cost us about $100 million to temporarily pause it. The legislature chose not to extend it longer, but gas prices are definitely going to impact summer travel. I think people being squeezed because of inflation is going to have an impact on the kinds of spending decisions and travel decisions they make. And a lot of our summer workforce of younger people that we need at some of our resort areas or places where people want to go spend time this summer, they're having a difficult time filling those positions. So those are all things we're very concerned about.
You mentioned the supply chain. I should have asked earlier, the Port of Baltimore, can you give us an update on how things are going in terms of supply chain there? They've had terrible problems on the West Coast, I know, but are you seeing things move, in Baltimore?
Well, we're really proud that the Port of Baltimore is one of the top ports in America. We're number one in the country for roll-on, roll-off, and we're a top, port on the East Coast. We have very little or no supply chain problems with our port. As a matter of fact, we're breaking records every single month after month, year after year. Just last week, we did an announcement where we have a brand new shipping line, Zim, which is an Israeli company that's going to now be also coming in and out of the port. We deepened our channel and deepened, 2 berths to 50 feet. We're working on a third one, which allows for the biggest ships in the world. We're fixing the Howard Street Tunnel, which will allow us to do double stack trains and nearly potentially double the production of the port. It'll create directly about 15,000 jobs and indirectly about 140,000 jobs. But there are certainly issues of the lack of supply of things that aren't being manufactured anywhere in the world. But as far as getting goods in and out, we have none of the problems that California is experiencing or the West Coast.
Have you, just because it's in the news so much, the baby formula issue, how are things going in Maryland on this? Do you guys sense there will be relief soon? And is anything coming through the Port of Baltimore?
Well, we're taking every step and every action we possibly can as a state, but this is really something it sounds as if maybe, the White House is trying to address at the federal level and trying to get the production ramped up. But this is a serious issue, I think, in every state in the country, and we're not immune to that. We're experiencing difficulty. I'm concerned about the moms and the parents and young children who really are very concerned about the lack of availability on the shelves. And so I think that's something that's got to be addressed nearly immediately because it's a serious problem.
And Governor, my last question, I know I asked Secretary Walsh this as well about the, conversation about Roe versus Wade right now and the anticipation of the Supreme Court ruling. I know you guys have had a lot of talks about it and legislation and vetoes in Maryland about the abortion issue. Can you talk us through what you think would happen if the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade and this becomes more of a state-by-state issue? How do you see things playing out?
Well, first of all, I think, so far it's a leaked potential draft of an opinion, and we don't know what the decision actually will be at the Supreme Court or if there will be one, but it's not going to impact our state at all. Maryland has a guaranteed right to an abortion. This is something that the Maryland voters voted on, and it's been the law of the land for quite some time, so it won't have any impact on us. I haven't made any efforts to change any of those laws, as I committed not to do since I've been governor. There was some recent bill in the legislature where they were trying to expand abortion to people that were not as qualified, and we thought that was a step backwards. So that was the bill that I vetoed, but it had nothing to do with Roe v. Wade.
Okay, we're out of time, Governor Hogan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank
thank
you,
everyone.